Welcome to Six Count. I'm your host, Zara Wild, bringing you the voices and stories of jazz from Durham, North Carolina.
Every honeybee feels a jealousy when they see you out with me. I don't blame them. Goodness knows my honeysuckle rose. When you're passing by, flowers droop and sigh, and I know the reason why. You're much sweeter, goodness knows my honeysuckle rose.
Angela, thank you so much for joining Six Count this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, Zara. It's nice to be here.
And I just got back from New York, and my first performance that I saw with you was at the Sharp 9 when you were doing a Songs of New York tribute. And so I was wondering what your personal connection was, or if you just love songs from New York.
Oh, yeah. So that was called Do You Miss New York? That was the show I did. Yeah, I lived in New York for a while. I lived in New York from 2005 to 2011. The minute I got there, I was immersed in New York life. And you know, one of the things that I loved so much about being there was just meeting all the friends and everything who I had common musical references with, and all the people that I got to know there, and people I got to play with, and the people who came to listen to shows. And so that song by Dave Frishberg, Do You Miss New York, sort of became like the anchor, because it's like, oh, we've moved away now, but do you ever yearn to go back there and be in the stink of it again? And it's like detailing all the things that maybe are not the greatest about New York, but then it's like, oh yeah, I miss that.
Yeah.
That dirty old town.
You have been busy with some workshops at the Sharp 9 Gallery through the Durham Jazz Workshops Initiative. Will you share about the kind of work you've been doing and the students that you mentor?
Yes. So I've been teaching at the Durham Jazz Workshop now, coaching the vocal jazz ensemble, not a vocal jazz ensemble itself, but the group that just jazz singers. Sorry, when you say vocal jazz ensemble, that makes it sound like it's, you know, Take Six or something. That's not it. It's a combo. And so what we do is singers come in and they learn some things about how to sing jazz. And we sort of talk about the difference between being, you know, a regular singer out in the world who's maybe doing pop gigs or Broadway gigs or that kind of thing, and what the difference is with a jazz singer. And so I try to teach them and coach them through and a lot of listening about the differences between jazz singing and regular singing. And the thing that really comes through is that jazz singers need to be able to hang in the jazz world and speak the jazz language just as much as the instrumentalists. And so when you're leading a band, when you're the jazz singer on stage, you have a huge responsibility as somebody who has to, you know, be entertaining for the audience, sing music that is dear and near to your heart, and be able to sort of lead that band and be the band leader, because that's your job as a singer, you know. And so we talk about that, and I teach them, you know, just some basic stuff about how to choose songs, how to get your keys. You know, we talk about the difference between swing and bossa nova and tempos and waltz, and how to count in and out of tunes, and how to come up with some little arrangements on the spot, and just all the little nuts and bolts things that maybe if you were just a singer in the world, nobody ever taught you. Because this is stuff that I know I learned in my first 2 years of college when I was studying jazz singing. I got some of this information, but I had to learn all this stuff on the bandstand. You know, counting in a band I was really nervous to do that for a long part of my jazz singing career.
Was it just a comfort thing and being the one that the band is looking to for the beat, or what else kind of went into that intimidation?
Well, let's say you're singing a song and the song is, I don't know, let's say it's All of Me. Now, a piano player might start off the tune going, whatever. Okay, let's say they're starting it off at that tempo. But that might not be your tempo as a singer. All of me. Why not take all of me? That might not be the feel you want. It might not be the tempo you want. And can't you see, especially when you're doing a tune that has a lot of lyrics, you might want to sit into it a little deeper, a little heavier groove. You might want to be like, all of me, So your count off is going to be a 1, a 2, you're going to get that count off. Whereas the band needs to know where you are as the singer, as the soloist. I would say that's probably true for saxophone players and trumpet players. Anybody who's really the soloist needs to be able to do that, and that's what makes you a part of the band. Your instrument is your voice.
Especially with some songs or vocalese, it just would be close to impossible to sing that quickly when you're trying to get that many lyrics in.
Yeah, right. And, tunes like, a lot of people do the tune Twisted, and they do it too fast because it's like when it gets to that quick vocalese part, that Wardell Gray saxophone solo, it's just like, they say, as a child, I appeared a little bit. It's like, it's too fast. You gotta get those words out, and it needs to still swing and sit in the pocket and be in the groove, So you really, as a singer, you really need to know your tempos, and you need to know where it's comfortable for you. You need to know what key is comfortable for you, so that you can get up there and not be self-conscious.
What is your creative process like in building a show like the one you have coming up on June 9th with Jim Ketch, who's more so into the historic swing jazz type of genre? What goes into deciding what are some songs that would appeal to the audience or what you personally would enjoy? Yeah, share a little bit about that.
Well, this coming up show that I'm doing with Jim Ketch is a little bit different. So he and I have decided that we want to play together more frequently. And the first time I played with Jim, we just did some straight ahead, early, jazz standards from the 20th century, whatever. And I started brainstorming a little bit, and I said, hey, Jim, it would be really fun to play some of these heads, these jazz heads that people are really familiar with, that they don't know that there's lyrics to. And so I'm calling the show There's Lyrics for That. Hey,
I like it.
Because it happens a lot where, a jazz singer will go to a jam session or something, and everybody's playing Footprints, for example. And it's like, hey, I'm the singer. I know this tune. I'm a jazz singer. I know this tune. And they're like, well, you can't sing it because there's no lyrics. It's like, the hell I can't. I can sing it. First of all, I don't need lyrics to get up and sing with the band. I can just do my little non-lyrical thing. But if there's lyrics, why not get up and sing lyrics? And so I've found lyrics to a lot of these songs. So like Up Jump Spring by Freddie Hubbard, and
you have a Wayne Shorter and John Hendricks.
Yep, I've got
Monk.
Benny Golson, Along Came Betty, and just a lot of this, standard stuff that a lot of players play now, like more modern things. And then we're going to do like Reflections by Thelonious Monk. Has a beautiful lyric written by John Hendricks that Diane Reeves covered on one of her albums, and I'm going to use those lyrics. And then In a Sentimental Mood has some nice lyrics. We're going to do that. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be maybe some things that people haven't heard before. They didn't realize there were lyrics to it. The great Horace Silver tune Doodlin' has a whole big long vocalese written by John Hendricks. So we're going to do that.
Sounds hard to remember.
Yeah, a lot of lyrics. I like to memorize lyrics too. So it is a lot of work for me. As you were asked about the creative process, it takes a lot to find the tunes that are your tunes. And so, yeah, there might be some great tunes out there, but if the lyric doesn't really speak to you and you aren't really in love with it, I always advise singers, and I learned this from Jay Clayton, the great jazz vocal teacher, sing tunes you love and don't sing tunes you don't love. Just because it's in the canon of the fake book or whatever, if you don't love it and you don't relate to it, don't sing it. You have to be able to sing your story. You have to be able to put a little spin of yourself on it and sell it, And so that's part of my creative process, is just finding tunes I love. I have to love the melody. Usually the melody comes first, because if I don't like the melody, it's like, And then what are the lyrics? And then sometimes if I don't like the lyrics, I'll just write my own.
Oh, so you're a songwriter as well.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a songwriter. I've written some lyrics here and there, like as needed.
Okay.
Lyrics as needed, yeah.
Do you have any favorite lyricists, or sometimes we just know them from the vocalist who sang them if they're not always one and the same?
Yeah, I think I have to say, like, one of my favorite lyricists is hands down Johnny Mercer, because his lyrics are just clever and wonderful. I mean, there's so many lyricists, of course, that I love. I mean, I love all kinds of music. And so good lyrics are just good lyrics. You know, I'm a total Joni Mitchell file, like, as people probably know by now. But, I mean, her lyrics are insanely amazing and poetic and beautiful. But Johnny Mercer, there was something about, like, for example, the tune P.S. I Love You, which I have on my record that I released in 2016, which, by the way, I'm due for another.
Yeah.
He says, you know, the lyric is something like, oh, I burned a hole in the dining room table. You know, she's writing a letter to her husband or whoever it is. He's obviously across the miles. Everybody misses him, you know. And then she says, well, nothing else to say. But I by the way, I burned a hole in the dining room table. Well, how did that come up? It just leaves you with this visual in your mind of this story. Like, why did she burn a hole in the dining room table?
Yeah.
You know, those are the kind of lyrics I love, where there's some little weird thing that kind of keeps you sucked in and interested.
Do you feel like you try to tell a story in your shows that, you know, have an arc or beginning and end?
There is definitely a little bit of a formula that I follow. I'm going to reveal all of my secrets.
Yeah, is this the secret sauce?
All right, everybody. But I definitely, there's a few elements that I like to have. I like to mix it up melodically. You know, I like to mix it up rhythmically, obviously. You don't want to do medium swing all night long. I like to have levels of, you know, features. So I'll have a bass and a voice feature, or just a piano and voice feature. I like to hit them with something that's, you know, hello, nice to see you, thank you for coming to. I mean, I treat my stage as like my living room, and everybody who comes to the show is my guest, you know?
Yeah, it did feel like that.
I'm like, welcome to my living room. We're going to have a show now. And the audience is just as much a part of that show as, you know, that's important to me. I mean, they are really important for me. And then I like to hit them with something that's going to, you know, make them think a little bit, you know. Always, usually the second set, the third to last song on the second set is something that's just going to hurt them, you know, make them cry, you know.
Yeah. Call the person they love when they get home.
Something poignant, you know, that second to last. This is more of also a thing where it's like a late night jazz thing. And it's like, you know, the glasses are clinking and it's like, okay, now I'm going to play the tender ballad for you while it's nice and quiet. And, but I want to create those moods, you know, and those emotional moods. I want people to feel something when they come to my shows. I want them to feel like they're part of the show and the storytelling. And it's not always a perfect storytelling situation, but it's definitely an experience so that we're all together in this music, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I imagine it also changes depending on where you are, because you perform a lot of times at the Pimiento Tea Room in Holly Springs. You're at the Umstead Hotel.
I also sometimes play at the O. Henry in Greensboro. They have a little jazz series in their lobby there, which is really nice. Yeah, it depends on the audience. I mean, I personally always try to talk to the audience, no matter if it's a listening crowd or not. By the time, I mean, not to toot my own horn too much, but usually
you are my podcast guest, so
fine. I'll get out my trumpet. I like to bring them in somehow. I want them to be interacting with me. And I mean, I'm not going to like, you know, all right, now you know, I'm not going to do like a sing along or anything like that, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I do a sing along. It depends on the room. As a performer, you really need to read the room. If you know, I grew up playing in jazz clubs when I was younger that were so loud. I mean, I call it jazz clubs in quotes. It was just a club that had jazz. It wasn't like a jazz club like Sharp 9. Everybody's yelling and drinking, and the music is in the background,
not paying attention. Yeah.
And that was back in the days when people could smoke in bars too. So they were smoking. So, you know, it was just like, what am I doing? But I got a lot of practice in a situation like that. That's a hard situation to be in as a jazz musician, because, you know, people are not listening. And what do you do? How do you get their attention? How do you bring them in? if you as a performer want to bring people in, you got to do something to bring them in. And I mean, bring them in emotionally, bring in their attention to you. And so you just try to talk to them. And, I always try to do that. It's important to me.
You're so charismatic on stage and in real life that I'm getting to experience right now, but was wondering if you feel like you have an on-stage persona, which can still be an authentic side of yourself. It's just what you are on stage.
Yeah. That's something that I've given a lot of thought to over the years, because I've thought, do I need to have some kind of performer persona? And I think what I've come to realize is that my kind of what you see is what you get. And so my particular thing is I'm a jazz singer. I am totally a jazz singer. I am a different kind of singer than like a pop singer. I'm going to get real with you. I'm going to be real. That's it. And so if I'm at the Pimento Tea Room and I start singing a ballad, for example, I still have people there watching me going, she's really getting into this. She's really telling the truth. And so if there's anything I want people to know, it's that, as a jazz singer, my job is I'm the messenger. It's not about me. It's not about my performance. It's about the music and the message of the music. And it's supposed to come through me and make its way through me, out of me, and over to you. And it's communication. And in this world we are now living in, where everything is fake and everything is AI and everything is online and we need real performances more than ever, I think. Don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I personally do love the in-person intimate space where you can see the humanity of the musicians and the singers come out. And yeah, that really resonates.
So I don't really particularly have a quote unquote persona, but I definitely do feel like my job is to be the messenger,
What are you working on right now to memorize, or a song that's just sort of challenging you at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on the lyrics for Lion for Lions, which is a Jerry Mulligan tune. And it's going to be included in this show I'm doing with Ketch on the 9th. And the lyrics are really fun. I actually have them on this. One of the things I do, and I teach this to the singers in the jazz workshop, is you have to write the lyrics down. You have to write them down, and it's repetition over and over and over. And I think a lot of times singers don't realize, I have to sing it that many times. I'm like, yeah, you got to sing it that many times to really get it under your belt. So I'm working on Line for Lions, and it's like, listen to them play our song, how they shock my poor brain with that electric refrain. I hear a buzzing just like a dozen doorbells. So I'm trying to memorize all this. Every time I hear our song, I get weak in the knees. My heart pumps up a breeze, sending a stream to every extremity. I have to memorize all these.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that.
How do you think about stylizations? Because I'm sure there's a line where it's just, that's just too much because it's kind of getting away from the song, but then also making it your own or trying to do the song like it was perhaps initially performed.
Well, one of the things that I ascribe to, and a lot of jazz singers will talk about this, is that you always have to let the lyrics inform the phrasing. And so if the lyric goes in a certain direction, then you have an opportunity to make the phrase go in a certain direction. So I'm just trying to think of a tune that I could do a demonstration on this with. But it's these songwriters who wrote these songs, especially with like the American Songbook songs, they kind of knew what they were doing when they wrote something that was a big wide open vowel word with a great big rise in the song. They kind of knew what they were doing when they wrote that. And so you just have to let those lyrics inform how you sing it and really think about the lyrics and really think about the storytelling. That is what, that's what we do as singers. That's the beauty of being a singer, actually. That's one of the most fun parts about it, is that we do have these lyrics. And so we can play around with, My Funny Valentine. My funny, like if I wouldn't go, my funny Valentine. Maybe I would.
But it's different,
sweet,
yeah.
But it's different than if I go, my funny Valentine. Or maybe it's my funny Valentine. Like, who is it? I don't know. What is it? I don't know. It depends on what I'm in the mood for, or perhaps what I want to say. Because maybe my personal spin on it is a little different than somebody else's, which would be like, sweet comic Valentine. You make me smile in my heart. Your looks are laughable, unphotographable. Well, that's not very nice. Like, is it a love song? Is it, what is it? And so those are the things we think about, You just have to go through that process of thinking about, what do I want to say here? What am I trying to get across? What message am I trying to get across? If I'm the messenger, what is the message that I want with this? Yeah, that's what I always think about.
I think I'll listen to my next song with lyrics in a smarter way. So thank you. Yeah, to paying attention to all of that.
You're welcome.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your voiceover career because you've been doing it now for a decade. So that's pretty wonderful.
That today.
And I was curious if you feel like your voiceover career sometimes has some crossover with your work as a vocalist, and if they kind of feed each other in any way.
Oh, they absolutely do. In fact, one of the things that was so exciting about learning voiceover was that I could apply so much of my jazz singing to voiceover as well, because phrasing is a huge part of voiceover and how you speak the words. So if somebody is giving you, a lot of the work that I do is corporate narration, which it could not be more different than jazz singing, because there's nothing fluffy or fun about it. It's just real dry, straightforward stuff. And a lot of it is kind of a soft sell. And so to learn how to do that little thing. So like I'm talking, what is artificial intelligence? Who cares, guys? So you have to figure out a way to make it sound interesting for the listener, because you're trying to sell this thing to the people, right? And what I discovered too in voiceover is that a lot of what people are looking for in voiceover is a conversational approach. And so it's like the way that you and I are talking right now. But if I was reading a script, I would not be conversational. You would not be conversational. You'd be like, okay, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is this. And so I'm clearly reading. You have to make it sound like you're not reading.
How do you do that?
We do the same thing in voiceover. I mean, in jazz singing, you have to study the script, and you have to know what is the most important message of this script. What is the thing that they're trying to get across? Okay. Now that I have that, now I can emphasize certain words and de-emphasize other words, because the word the word and, the word of, the word because, the word so, the word, like all these little words, they're not necessary. They're not important to the
like
message.
Just bridge the ones
they're
that
bridges, right? So you don't hang on them the same way that you hang on the important stuff. That's the whole trick of it. And to distill it down to that makes it sound really simple. And it is simple, but it's difficult to do because oftentimes the script is, it's written by somebody who's like a marketing person, not necessarily they're not a screenwriter who deals with dialogue. They're a person who deals with marketing copy. And so
sentences could be long or just not. And
you got to figure out where the emphasis goes and what the intent is. And so that's what I do. And voiceover is my dream job, because I get to use my voice and make money using my voice. When I was growing up, my parents were like, no, you don't need to study music in school. You need to get a job.
Yeah. Was that terrifying when you said, I want to be a jazz singer?
Well, I always had a day job, I always had a day job. And it wasn't until 2013 that I actually quit my day jobs and just focused solely 100% on getting voiceover work and doing jazz singing. Yeah. And teaching. I've started teaching now. Just in the last few years, I've started teaching, which I never thought I could be a teacher before either. But now I love it. So, everything changes. You just, you get more confidence under your belt, and then you realize, I do have something I can teach,
What convinced you in 2013 to make that jump? Or was it just kind of what happened and
midlife crisis and depression?
It's can be powerful motivators.
Yep. I was really tired of being somebody else's secretary or whatever. And it was really dragging me down hard. And I was really sad. And I just told my husband he had landed a really good job. And he's a musician too, but we both had day jobs. And I just said, man, I can't do this anymore. It's sucking my soul. Like I can't, I'm depressed. And, he said, okay, let's get it going. I'm lucky because I have the most supportive husband in the entire world, you know? But yeah, it's a slow process. You don't just suddenly overnight start getting voiceover gigs, just as you don't suddenly overnight getting jazz singer gigs, you know? You have to work at it. You have to hustle. I'm always a freelancer, you know? I'm always trying to figure out ways to, how am I going to save for retirement? How am I going to pay off debt? You know, all these things. So it's hard, but it's definitely, the trade-off is for me better for my brain and my soul and my heart and all those things.
We talk about outlets, but I feel like what you're describing is not treating what is good for your soul as an outlet, but that is just living your life as you want to live it. So I appreciate that a lot.
I'm lucky that we live in a time when I can do this. We have all this technology, you know, the voiceover world was completely shaken up by people having in-home studios. And now you can produce your own, you know, tracks and send them off to the client across the world. You can be on a call with a client and they're recording you on their side and they edit your tracks. You don't need to be in a studio with people anymore. And so it just, all the old school voice actors were like, you know, grumbly because this happened. But for people like me, it was great. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like jazz singing chose me too. Like I started singing when I was a baby and I never stopped.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't really have a choice, you know, singing chose me. And why jazz singing? Why jazz? I don't know. I just was always drawn to the American Songbook, always drawn to the jazz singers, Ella, Sarah Vaughan, Anita O'Day. I'm obsessed with Blossom Dearie, you know, obsessed with just, and then I started listening to instrumentalists, you know, whenever jazz singers come to the workshop, they'll say a lot of times, I want to start singing jazz. And I'm like, okay, who do you listen to? And a lot of times they don't listen to anybody. And I'm like, have you ever heard of Freddie Hubbard? Have you ever heard of Dexter Gordon? Have you ever heard of Miles Davis? Can you sing a Miles Davis solo? Can you? So those are all, I don't know. I just was obsessed with that music as a teenager, and here it is, living the way I want to live now, you know?
I at least believe in design in a sort of cosmic sense, and so it is neat to hear this sort of compulsion to do what you feel like you must do. Because otherwise, oftentimes, being a jazz musician, a vocalist isn't the most straightforward way to be successful in the traditional sense.
Right. And I remember hearing Sheila Jordan one time say, because Sheila Jordan worked at an ad agency for most of her career. And finally, the advertising agency in New York City was like, Sheila, you need to quit. Like, you're a famous jazz singer. You need to quit. And I remember saying, you know, you just support the music until the music supports you. You know, and that's how important it is to people. And it's important to me too. I love spreading this word to people. I love the Sharp 9 and the Durham Jazz Workshop, getting to take these singers in and teach them a little something new about, you know, this world. It's so fun. And your podcast. I'm so glad to see that you have this podcast for us. It's great.
Thank you so much for joining it.
Yeah.
But we're not done yet. I want to ask you a couple more questions. Wanted to ask about your movie podcast, which you're also a podcaster yourself, and was curious if that's just kind of a fun on the side thing. It's called Put Your Book Down, which I thought meant
put your books down.
Or put your books down. Not to be about books, but it's about movies.
Yeah, it's put your books down. So
don't read.
Stop reading your book. And so my friend Natalie Sanderson and I were really close friends in New York City when I worked for Godiva in New York.
Oh, cool.
And we did marketing and stuff. So she and I were very close, and we always just had this back and forth banter just constantly. And a few years ago, well, actually, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And just through a series of weird little coincidences, she got her own podcast. And then she said, and I cannot do this by myself. I don't have the banter to be able to interview people. You have to come do this with me. So I went and met with the podcast producers, and we're like, okay, we're doing this. So what we do on Put Your Books Down is we don't talk about serious topics. I mean, we do sometimes. Things come up conversationally, but we review movies, TV shows. We play stupid games. Would you rather? We do okay, who are the top 5 famous people you're going to have at your summer barbecue? Go. We talk about inappropriate things. I mean, we're just all over the map. It's like a couple of gals just laughing and having a good time. But I really think it fits in with like you were asked about my persona. It's like, again, we need people who are real. We need reality. We don't need to be so produced about everything all the time. Just show your realness. It's much more interesting to me when I see the realness. I don't need your curated version of yourself all the time. I want you to tell me what's going on with you, Give me your thoughts on whatever it is. And I think that is why there are so many podcasts, because people love to talk, we need it because we're also in our little cocoons. But our goal with that podcast is just to make people laugh. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. Yeah, it makes us laugh too.
Are there any movies or TV series that include jazz music really well? I know sometimes it can feel like it just chooses the cheesy ones, but
yeah, did you ever see that film?
I never have seen the film, but maybe I'll be lucky.
It's Melissa McCarthy. It's called "Can You Ever Forgive Me"?
Have you seen that? But that'll be on my list.
It's great. It tells the story of this woman who's a writer. Her name is Lee something. I can't remember her last name right now, but she ends up forging letters and selling them because they're really valuable, in the New York literary scenes and stuff. Wow. She ends up forging some documents and selling them on the open market for thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's based on a true story of this washed up writer that was doing this. And the soundtrack on that has Doris Day and Blossom Dearie and just killer, some really moody stuff. That was great. Also, did you ever see Sully, the one about Sully Sullenberger, the one that is about the guy who landed the plane on the Hudson River? That movie, Tierney Sutton Band did the music for that.
Oh, very cool.
It is stunning. She and her band did this, just gorgeous, lots of vocals with no words, just her floating across the music with, it's just beautiful. And then, of course, you hear a lot of stuff Terrence Blanchard has done. And Sneakers, the film Sneakers from the 90s, starring Robert Redford. Branford Marsalis features prominently in that one.
Oh, cool.
And his saxophone is all through that movie, and it's great. That was one of the first things that popped out at me was that's Branford. Yeah. That's fun.
I saw a movie, I'm trying to remember the name, where Louis Armstrong is in it, and I had never seen a video of Louis Armstrong actually performing. And so it was neat to not just hear the music, but see when musicians were included in movies, and just wondering what the kind of culture was about that, if that was really desirable to make it into a movie, or if that felt like selling out, or I guess it might depend on what the movie was.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, Louis Armstrong was in a lot of stuff. Lena Horne was in stuff. Ella Fitzgerald was even in some stuff. She sings Tisket a Tasket in a movie. I can't remember what it is right now, but she's on a train. And you would never even, her voice when she was so young, her voice sounded so different than when she was a little bit older. You could still tell it's Ella, but it's definitely, a young Ella. I think musicians have always sort of gravitated towards movies. I feel like they're such an aligned art form that it makes a lot of sense for musicians, especially jazz musicians, because the music just lends itself so well to the mood and to the time, of a lot of these films. And also, I hate to brag on jazz musicians too much, but jazz musicians can play anything.
Yeah, if they can do jazz, you can do pop.
Unlike a classical musician who can't really necessarily play jazz because it's just not the way they're taught. They're not really taught to improvise.
It's now break all the rules.
Yeah. So I feel like jazz musicians, if you want a good soundtrack, call the jazz musicians because they can play rock. They can play classical. They can play, a Afro-Cuban beats. They can play Latin rhythms. They can play all that stuff,
Yeah.
and be good at it.
Well, maybe a movie producer will listen to this podcast and get you on it. Anything else you'd like to share about what's happening for you this summer and where people can follow along with your work?
Yeah, they can follow me basically on Instagram, I would say. I'm trying to get better about getting my website to be a hub of information, but I just haven't been working on it. But follow me on Instagram, Sing Angela Sing, or Angela Bingham Official is really what it is.
You have great reels and very humorous ones.
I've been trying to, keep being present in social media because, again, I want people to feel like when they come to my shows, they're coming to have an experience with me, and that they're and all are welcome. I want to embrace them. So we're wrapping up the last session of the jazz vocal workshop this week. And then we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to start up again on July 31st. So if there's anybody out there listening right now that needs a spot, I think we still have one spot open. I try to keep it to 4 or 5 singers.
So tight.
It's a 2-hour workshop. It's 6 sessions. I think this next one is only going to be 5, though, because of 4th of July. Or no, not 4th of July, but something else. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay. 6 sessions usually. And people can go to the DurhamJazzWorkshop.org to sign up. But yeah, just come hang out with me. I try to post my gigs pretty regularly. That's pretty much it.
And I know our regular listeners would know that Durham Jazz Workshops is housed at the Sharp 9 Gallery, but those are not used synonymously, or how do you kind of describe the difference? There's the jazz club, but then also there are workshops at the building itself.
That's it. You just described it perfectly. There's a big, beautiful stage and club area. And then off to the side, there's a bunch of little classrooms where we do the workshops, and that's how that goes. Yeah. I also teach privately now too, so I'm taking on 1 or 2 new students too. If people want to just dip their toe into getting a little more improvisational and learning how to choose tunes that are their tunes, and how to count in the band, and how to get a little practice under their belt. That's what we do.
Well, I know I can't sing, but I almost feel like I could after you.
Everybody can sing.
Oh, we can dream. Angela, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. It's so nice to be here. And congratulations on your podcast. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Dear, I thought I'd drop a line. The weather's cool. The folks are fine. I'm in bed each night at 9. P.S. I love you.
Thank you for listening to 6 Count. I'm Zara Wild. You can let us know what you thought of the episode or recommend a guest by emailing us at 6countpodcast@gmail.com or by finding us on Twitter or Instagram at 6countpodcast. If you'd like to support our work in telling the story of jazz in Durham, you can make a gift to the show by following the link in our episode description. Thanks for listening.